Paulie Malignaggi here for Paulie TV, and today I'm going to answer your questions, guys. You know, we got to have a little bit of engagement with you guys. I'm appreciative of the fact that you guys listen to me and give your take on my opinions and my boxing takes in the comments, which obviously I always want you guys to like, subscribe, and comment and all that good stuff. But today I'm actually going to answer some of your questions on the show, on camera. And give my take and sort of a direct engagement between the fan base, the Paulie TV fan base, and Paulie Malignaggi himself. So let's go, man. We're gonna have somebody we're gonna have Jimmy over here read the questions, and I have not looked at these. I don't want to be prepared for them. I like to be hit with the blind side.